Hello, I'm the Dark Master, and boy, this video essay has been quite delayed. At the time of writing this video, will be coming out around the time of the new season of Ninjago that's being released for 2023. But what can I say? I like to take my time and do my research when doing these sort of one-off videos. But now let us, without further ado, start with the topic of this video, that being Ninjago Crystalized and, well, what exactly went wrong with it. First, let us establish the context that is relevant here. Ninjago Crystalized was released as the 15th season of Ninjago Masters of Spinjitzu. It served as a conclusion to a story set in motion since at least Season 11, Secrets of the Forbidden Spinjitzu, and heck, arguably Season 9 Hunted, but we'll get to that shortly. In many ways, it was hyped up akin to Endgame, with even the posters being similar, and it was really even considered a finale to the entire series, though not really. Overall, this season had a lot of potential, and the trailer certainly had a great deal of hype, and the sets were wildly liked, well, except for the price of some of them and a certain figure that will be discussed later. But even when the show itself came out, it was relatively well liked, but by the time it was fully released, let's just say feelings were less than positive in terms of what you would expect. And this video will explore the many reasons for why that is the case, while also giving my thoughts on the season as a whole. As always, though, let us start with what I would consider the sole unqualified positive of the season. So yeah, spoilers, the main bad guy is actually the Overlord, who has been reborn under the new name of the Crystal King. Not only is it an excellent return of a classic villain not seen since Ninjago rebooted back in 2014, but also is just a generally well done villain. Not only with a good voice performance by Scott McNeil doing his voice, he also engages in numerous excellent fight scenes and, frankly, just left a great impression. It also confirmed the well-supported fan theory that, back in the past, the Overlord corrupted the Great Devourer, which eventually bit Garmadon and caused him to turn evil, and then he eventually released the Overlord. So that's a neat little fan theory that they luckily confirmed in this season. With that being said, though, even though it is, to me, an unqualified positive, even such an aspect like the Overlord does have some criticism. Firstly, according to many, and frankly I agree, the minifigure they made for him just doesn't really pass the muster. I mean, the one in this show actually had a lot of neat detail. Frankly, the one in the sets just looks like a guy in a furry costume, which, frankly, to me, doesn't really fit the vibe they're going for. And I mean, just remove the helmet and you get a far better looking bad guy. They also are many in the community that say that he is a flat character doing the exact same plot from his last two appearances. But I consider both of these criticisms to be, well, rather lacking compared to the other issues that we shall address regarding this season in a bit. First, when it comes to whether or not he is a flat villain, I think a lot of people assume that a villain without a tragic backstory / some level of postmodernist moral grayity must be bad, or at the very least one-dimensional, i.e., like Skeletor. And they point out how amazingly, rightfully so in some cases, done our three-dimensional villains have been, such as Loki or Noah Cross, as two examples. And while these are definitely debatable, I often think in the art community, this obsession with the moral grayity often obscures how great and, frankly, far more impactful in some cases a simpler black and white villain can be. The truth is, however, a great villain doesn't necessarily need to be this morally gray to be good. In fact, many of the greatest villains lack this, whether we're talking about the biblical Satan, Sauron, or Morgoth from The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien, Jadis the White Witch or Tash from The Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis, or more recent examples such as Emperor Bellows from The Owl House. I would consider the Overlord among these groups as being a purely evil being that is frankly very compelling, and a lot of his scenes he definitely leaves a great impact, especially in contrast to some of the other villains in the series. As for the second argument, a lot of people make is that the Overlord is, doing the exact same scheme previously seen in his last two appearances.
I feel like because like
Yeah.
the Overlord trying to corrupt the element of creations was like the big plot twist thing at the end. But that's kind of like what he tried to do before, right?
But I think this is a very gross oversimplification of the Overlord. In his first appearance, the Overlord tricked Garmadon into upsetting the balance in favor of darkness so he could pass over into the physical world, and eventually possessed Garmadon, turning him into a dragon. While he did end up corrupting the ninja, this was an indirect result of his overall plan and not something he went out of his way to do. During his return in Rebooted, he specifically sought to regain physical form by harnessing Lloyd's golden power, so that he could overcome the element that defeated him the first time around, effectively removing the weakness that allowed him to be defeated the first time. During Crystalized, he sought to outright destroy the balance, not merely upset it, and his crystal powers were specifically made so that he could corrupt the four elements of creation and make them his slaves. While yes, there are similarities, to say that it is the exact same evil plan is just a frankly rather dishonest oversimplification. And while there are similarities, I think that you're grossly overstating it. Maybe some people should actually watch the episodes they're talking about instead of making baseless statements. And while, yes, the ninja do get corrupted, the contexts are completely different. Now, however, we must begin our lengthy discussion of the many truly negative parts of the season and why it is widely considered so bad. Since we talked about the main antagonist, let us start with the other characters and their related controversies and flaws seen in the season.
Spiders in the house, sleep, sleep. Spider bin the mouse, sleep deep. Don't wake up.
I can't wait to find a spider in her mouth.
So yeah, if you don't know, the Overlord is not the only villain to return from their supposed death. And unlike him, they don't have the excuse of being an eternal spirit of darkness. Harumi, who is definitely one of the strongest and most memorable of the new wave of Ninjago villains, not only gave rise to a lot of appreciation in the fandom, but also left a very large impact due to her emotional manipulation and abuse of Lloyd and resurrection of his father, just to twist the knife into his heart due to her blaming Lloyd for the death of her original family. Now, while she did die a heroic death in an attempt to prevent another family from undergoing the same trauma that she did as a child, but regardless, she established herself as one of the best Ninjago villains ever, and definitely the best female antagonist, at least according to most of the fan base. And the fact that she returned from death is controversial in and of itself, due to many considering her death to be such an important scene, and in many ways this undermines it, but is somewhat acceptable, given that Ninjago, let's be honest, has a rather flagrant relationship with death. I mean, seriously, how many people have died and then only returned from life? I mean, heck, let's be frank, so many deaths have occurred, it's amazing that they hold any weight whatsoever. You see, over the course of Ninjago Crystalized, Harumi goes increasingly close to Lloyd. You know, the person that she blames for the death of her parents? The person that she's been emotionally abusive for so long? The person that she basically broke the heart of? I think you can see the issue here is because not only does it, frankly, not make any sense character wise, but also leads to kind of a toxic relationship. I mean, seriously, Harumi mentally tortured Lloyd, and I understand that we don't really care about like abuse directed at certain groups of people. But like, I mean, really, the way these two are interacting is so utterly bizarre and out of character, it has absolutely no basis in it at all. And no, I'm not saying that characters can't change, but this was frankly not given enough time to truly develop nor build up to an appropriate ending. I mean, I do think that her betraying the Overlord after it's revealed that he caused the Great Devourer that killed her parents is understandable, but the fact that Lloyd is so forgiving and they kind of become a couple at the end is just so weird, and frankly, many have been justifiably angered at this. And I agree, I think it's a very weird decision and a weird way to take Lloyd and Harumi. Like, if you wanted to do this over a couple of seasons, maybe it'll work, but it was really rushed. Heck, even the other ninja are a bit hesitant with her at first, and understandable, but now let's talk about the other side of this relationship, that being what Crystalized did to Lloyd. So, Lloyd himself was actually relatively fine compared to, say, the other ninja, which we shall see shortly, though, despite this praise, there are three big issues with Lloyd that many have with him. First, of course, is his relationship with Harumi, which I've discussed earlier, so I won't dawdle for too long to avoid repetition, but Lloyd is rather forgiving considering what she did to him. It's even stranger as this weird forgiveness is contrasted heavily with how he treats his dad, often being just highly impatient or frankly just rude.
Because.
Because what?
Because I don't want to be like you! That's my greatest fear. That I'll end up like you. Because you don't care about anything or anyone.
That is not true.
Tell me one thing you care about. One thing! Plants don't count!
Now look, I can understand where Lloyd is coming from. I mean, his father and him do have a bit of a strained relationship, but I mean, gosh darn, it's so weird, given how he was the one who was so determined to save his father that he literally was almost beaten to death by him simply in order to try and reach him. And it's just such a weird development. Like, what the heck, Lloyd? Why are you more forgiving of Harumi than your own father? Especially when all the stuff your father did, especially post-hunted, was due to Harumi. And this leads into the third and final issue with Lloyd that many have, that being the Oni form. Now, as we've established in Season 11, due to a magic mirror, Lloyd has a fear of becoming his father, which is admittedly an understandable concern given his relationship with him. But in this season, we see that Lloyd, when he gets really angry, can tap into his Oni heritage. And this is important as the otherwise invincible Crystal Warriors are easily destroyed by the destruction power of Oni. Now, the first few times he does it, he does get very freaked out, and frankly, I think it works for the first few times. You know, it makes sense. He's just tapping into this power, and it causes him to go crazy, and he kind of just gets a little scared. But in the end, after the Overlord seemingly kills his father, Lloyd goes full Oni and takes on his golden Oni form, and yeah, spoilers, golden Oni Lloyd is a thing, though. This was kind of spoiled by the sets. I know, it's cool. We knew it was going to happen, but it was nice to see it. And I think it has a really good design in terms of general Oni designs. However, it wasn't the fact that it exists that many people have issue with. It was how it was utilized. For while indeed he is overpowering the Overlord for a bit, he sees his reflection and just, I guess, has a nervous breakdown and stops. And frankly, this is just absurd. Like, I can understand that you're scared of being your father, but seriously, Lloyd, you're fighting the equivalent of Satan. I think that's a little more important than your weird little daddy issues. I would say it also doesn't really give a good message. Like, instead of coming to terms with one's personal history and heritage in a healthy manner, Lloyd just like buries it, which I can assure you isn't healthy. And it's just very inconsistent with what earlier episodes and the season as a whole established that people have to accept the past. And it's just weird. Like, why would you do that? And listen, I'm not inherently against this concept, but seriously, it's just such a waste of opportunity. Especially since, let's be frank, the Overlord's not dead. He'll just come back again due to this, but But speaking of strange character inconsistencies, one character is arguably even more controversial than Lloyd, Nia.
There's a way back.
Yeah.
But I need to drain away my powers before I lose my...
So at the end of season 14, Seabound, spoilers, but come on. Nia made the ultimate sacrifice and became one with the Endless Sea in order to defeat the evil sea serpent Wujra. Now, it was an extremely touching and heartfelt sacrifice that saved the day and also saved the drowning Jay, while sacrificing everything. Now, this in and of itself was slightly controversial, with many angered tweets claiming that LEGO was quote unquote sexist for daring to kill off a female character. Now, many people thought that this would finally shake up the status quo, but for me, I kind of knew that this sacrifice wouldn't really last. I wish it did because it would be, for once, actually nice to see a lasting change. However, the series pretty much made death cheap, and well, the reaction of people on Twitter basically made it untenable for them to actually have her die. That being said, due to the nature of how Ninjago is planned, they were probably going to bring her back anyway, and it was actually handled decently well, but I can't really ignore how it greatly derailed Nia's sacrifice. Indeed, some of the very same people who complained about how Lego was sexist for causing her to die then complained that they brought her back, proving you really shouldn't pander to those types of worthless people. They'll just attack you and call you a bigot anyway. Don't pander to rattlesnakes. But after her revival, Nia's flaws didn't really go away. Indeed, her presence seems very underdeveloped, going through depression due to her lacking of powers, even though she already was competent without them for several seasons. I mean, does anyone remember Samurai X? She was Samurai X for a long time before she got her water powers. And if you thought, well, maybe that would stick. Maybe Nia permanently lost her elemental powers and now she has to take up the mantle of Samurai X. Maybe she can, like, work with Pixel and the two can work together. Nope! She unlocks her water elemental powers, effectively making it as if she never sacrificed herself at all! What an utter waste of a character. Nia deserves so much better, and it's just astounding how they were able to mess it up. I mean, really, you could easily have removed that entire existence of Nia in the season, and frankly, it wouldn't really matter. Heck, you could easily have put more time into the Crystal King and stuff like that. But whatever. But compared to what the remaining ninja got, I guess you could say she got off relatively well. So yeah, as you can see, the other ninja and Wu can all be put into a single section. This will become obvious why very shortly, but starting with Wu, he once again kept a very important secret from his allies. Seriously, again. First Moro, then the Time Twins, then Asphira, and now this? I would think he'd learn to stop keeping secrets, at least from Lloyd. Like, he knew the Overlord was coming back, and he didn't tell anyone? Darn it, Wu. You really should prepare for these things better. His fight against the Overlord was good, though. Wu did temporarily give up hope for a time, and that was kind of weird, frankly. It seemed out of character. Cole, unfortunately, didn't really do much this season. He called Queen Vanya Princess Vanya, which is just a obvious mistake. It's as if the writers didn't even watch that previous season and didn't know that she became queen after her evil father, King Vangelis, was overthrown. Kai was also relatively flat in terms of growth, being largely sidelined except for a somewhat awkward scene of him hitting on Skylar and trying to get serious. It doesn't really go anywhere and seems kind of forced. Zane is also a mixed bag, though well utilized in some ways, suffers from the same thing as Nia, where he seems to be regressing as a character and going through dealing with his emotions akin to what he did in some of the earliest seasons of the show. This is exemplified by his interaction with a character named Sally, which we will return to that episode and character soon, but otherwise, he was largely flat this season and wasn't really all that well utilized, unfortunately. Jay was actually the best of the main cast. Not only did he go through grief with Nia's death in a very realistic manner, he also wasn't all that annoying. I mean, there were cases with it, but in terms of all the ninja, I felt that he acted the most in character, and frankly, is really the only main character outside of like the Overlord that I can say without question is a genuine positive. Now, it's not perfect. As I stated before, there are some scenes where he can be a bit annoying, but overall, he was relatively okay, though people still complained about him, and that's another flaw that I had to talk about. Now that we've covered the main characters, let's talk about some of the minor side characters.
Oh, wow! Is that Hound Dog McDog?
He's taller than I thought.
Everyone else, in terms of the cast, is somewhat of a mixed bag. While some, like Asphira, Pixel, Pytho, Ronin, I admit, are perfectly fine and I actually like them, others seem to be just there, like the Mayor, Sirius Borg, Kill Owl, Ultraviolet, Fugitive. And some were annoying in the way filler are annoying. Like, seriously, Hound Dog McBride was just awful and served as a waste of time. Mr. F was just disappointing due to, well, nothing was really done with him. He's just Mr. E. Like, why bring him back if you're not actually going to have him say anything or do anything? It's a real missed opportunity. I think they could have done something with him and Zane, but whatever. I actually liked how the mechanic was handled in the season, as he actually is a legitimate threat for the first time in the series. Even more so than the series where he was meant to be the antagonist alongside Unagami. Sadly, it seems not a lot of people liked him, with some even going to accuse him of being a sexist.
The mechanic just gets like weirdly sexist, and that's just his character for the rest of the season.
Which is frankly absurd given how he has a personal vendetta with Nia as established in past seasons, so of course he would do a bit of battle smack talk. I don't know why people complain about this. No one has an issue when like villains say similar stuff to male heroes. Like no one's gonna be calling you a sexist if you call him boy or something. It's just weird. Like it's weird that these people are actually sexist in that they will demand villains who are again are meant to be bad guys be like politically correct. Like, that's just weird, but perhaps the most controversial of all these side characters is Sally. Now, I want to clarify what the controversy really is, as a lot of people have tried to muddy the waters with it. No, the issue people have is not the fact that for a few seconds the rainbow flag on the car and her guitar are seen. I know a lot of people were complaining on Twitter about people supposedly complaining about the inclusion. But here's the thing, no one actually complained about it to any serious extent. The worst that there was were some like no follower Twitter accounts commentating on the fact that there was a rainbow flag, which, I mean, I think is perfectly reasonable. I don't think simply commentating on something's presence is inherently bigoted. In fact, if I was to out-progressive these people, I would point out the fact that these cameos are the peak example of virtue signaling rainbow marketing, which corporations like Lego can put into specifically show support in order to get money from the LGBT community before editing them out of the airings of the show in sub-Saharan Africa, the entire Middle East except Israel, Eastern Europe, Russia, China, India, and pretty much everywhere that isn't a modernized Western country with a high level of support for these communities. I mean, seriously, you are being used and you don't even know it, but you think that you are so enlightened when really you're just a stupid consumer. No, the real reason so many people like myself have an issue with Sally is due to the sheer waste of time. Like, why is she here? Surely the time could have been better used to transition between the two parts of the season. Like, seriously, the only purpose she serves is to teach Zane that emotions are actually good and you shouldn't run away from them, which is something that he already learned in previous seasons. It's just a vacuous waste of time that Sally makes up. And listen, it was a nice little story, and the fact that she participated in the final battle was cool, though kind of stupid because she'd be turned into a crystallized zombie almost immediately. Like, why is her guitar able to destroy invincible crystallized warriors? It's not the sticker, but I don't know, that's just stupid. But now that we've discussed the characters, let's go into some of the deeper issues with the season in terms of structure and plot.
Stop him.
Now, ever since Ninjago March of the Oni, the series has struggled to make do with half the total time per episode, decreasing from 22 minutes to 11 minutes. On the face of this, the structure tends to lead to episodes feeling very rushed. While yes, the old length could suffer sometimes from filler. The thing about filler is that it can be worked around. Think about Dragon Ball Z Abridged. But a rushed story remains rushed, and you can't really fix that. And it's for this reason that filler is often an overstated evil with most things. And even then, it doesn't really work, as you still get filler. Like, look at the whole interaction with Sally that I've already gone into. And really, the season as a whole, it seems to be sort of made of two different seasons that were rather slapdashly connected. First, there is the first half where the ninja try to save Nia, which, undoes the sacrifice at the end of Seabound, so there's that issue. And while on a conceptual level it's pretty bad, the actual way it was done was well made enough, though there were some choices that seemed dumb, especially Asphira not telling them about the staff until it was most inconvenient. Nia being frozen, though, was a neat workaround, though. Though one could always ask why they didn't just put her in a freezer or something, but, The ninja end up getting arrested and do eventually escape in a somewhat forced way, and this time serves as a transition between the Nia Resurrection arc, as I like to call it, and the Crystal King arc of the season. And frankly, it seems like the two seasons have been frankly forced into a single season when really I kind of think that maybe they should have given each thing its own season just to let it breathe a little more. As for the ending, well, it's also rather underwhelming for many reasons. First, the Golden Dragon not only has a frankly kind of ugly design and is a pointless horror vision, but also in some ways is just a lazy redo of the Overlord's previous defeat by a Golden Dragon. And really, they claim that the elements are going to disappear with it when it dissipates, but that's complete baloney. Not only do we know for a fact that they come back immediately afterwards, they do it in a freaking book series. I mean, seriously. The golden weapons that were supposedly supposed to disintegrate in the ultimate sacrifice even remained in the hands of the ninja. How did they forget that? In the end, it just kind of screams the phrase status quo is God. Overall, Crystallized was a season with a lot of potential as a finale, even if it's not really a finale given recent events. However, it was weighed down by a lot of strange and bad decisions that hamper the season from its true potential, even if it does have really great animation and a really amazing main villain. So yeah, this is the video I'm wanting to make for some time, and hopefully if you enjoyed it, you consider subscribing. I might be doing some more nature and Ninjago related videos for the next video essays, or maybe go back to just doing Kirby reviews and Ninjago lore. It really depends on how it is received and how people think about it, and my general motivation levels. Anyway, I'm the Dark Master, and have a wonderful day.